Hi, this is Jennifer Ray, your host of The Pulse today. We are at the Old Log Theater with new owner, or fairly new owner, it's been 2+ years, Mr. Greg Frankenfield. Thank you so much
Well, it's nice to meet
for having us come here today. And we were going to discuss a little bit with Mr. Frankenfield about the history and how he came to own the Old Log Theater. So first of all, I Googled, and on Wikipedia it showed that the Old Log Theater is the oldest professional theater in the state of Minnesota, and it is often cited as the oldest continuously operated theater in the United States. So to own something like that, not everybody wants that on their balance sheet as an asset, is a theater. So what in the world brought you to owning a theater?
Well, it's kind of a long story if you want to hear it. I grew up doing theater in middle school, high school, even in college. I ended up getting a degree in chemical engineering and a master's in business administration and information systems. But even as getting my master's, I had the opportunity to perform on one of the main stages at the University of Minnesota Rarick Center. So I've always been fascinated by theater, but I set it aside for a long time and went and made a career and started a business and have been raising a family for the last 30 years. And as I'm coming and looking for the next phase of my life, I had an opportunity to turn back to theater. As my children got older, when they hit Minnetonka High School, they began doing plays and musicals with Kent Knutson, and got to introduced to Kent. And I actually began doing some community theater with my friends and with Kent, and kind of got the theater bug all over again. But as I realized when I was young, I necessarily wasn't the best actor in the world, but I realized I had the opportunity and the means to potentially own a theater. Initially, and we went after the Chanhassen Dinner Theater when it was for sale several years ago. And that deal fell through, and we elected not to purchase the theater, and it's been doing very well on its own without us. And my wife and I used to take walks down the path behind the Old Log Theater, and we both came to it as children. We knew of the theater, and we learned through some acquaintances that it was for sale as well. And my wife happened to be at the time looking for something to do as our kids were getting older, and she had less daily involvement with their activities, and we talked about it, and we approached the Stoltz family at the time, and it took about 3 or 4 years to convince them, but they finally agreed to sell us the theater and the restaurant approximately 2 years ago.
And then not only did you buy it, but you gutted it, you renovated it, and it is beautiful. And it was beautiful and charming before, very quaint, but it is absolutely beautiful. So can you tell us a little bit about the expansion that you made, and the extension of the restaurant is amazing, and just some of the changes that you did for the patrons who come here?
We had a little different vision than the Stoltz family did. We want to honor their legacy. They kept it going for 75 years, which is an amazing accomplishment in the theater world. But we had a little different vision for the next generation of people who would be coming to the theater. And so one of the very first things we realized is we wanted to upgrade the technology in the theater. It's very expensive to maintain, and the theater had grown into a little bit of disrepair. And Kent may have mentioned that to you at one point, that we expanded the stage, but we also improved all of the lighting and sound technology so that they were more energy efficient. Which is important in today's modern age, and it wasn't in the past. And a brand new sound system. We know that on the average, the people who attend are a little bit older than average. They might be a little bit harder of hearing than a young person. And so we put a state-of-the-art sound system in, and we made the stage a little more modern, a little more kind of up to current and modern standards. We also had a vision. The restaurant was run for 40 years, really as an adjunct to the theater. If you went to the theater, you could buy a ticket, you could buy a dinner, and you'd pay for both at the same time, and you'd order in advance, and then you'd show up, and they'd have your dinner ready for you, and much like a wedding might be. My wife had a vision for the restaurant that would be a separate freestanding business, in that you could come to the restaurant and have a dinner, a great dinner, and not necessarily attend a show, or come and have a great dinner and attend the show. So we kind of broke them apart. And so we had a vision for a brand new fine dining restaurant, chef-driven, local produce. And so we planted almost 1.5 acres of gardens on this 11.5 acres of property we have here. So we would have locally sourced produce for part of the season. And we went through a planning phase, and redesigned the entire restaurant, basically everything outside the theater. And as we got into it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Every wall we tore down, every thing we got into, you realized, oh, that's going to need replacement and repair. So it actually went further than we thought. The first and most difficult thing we did was they ran it for 40 years. When dinner ended, the show started. And once the show started, nothing happened in the lobby. You had to be quiet. The vents were wide open. You could hear a pin drop in the lobby on stage. So we had to soundproof the back of this theater. So the very first thing we did is we tore down the entire back of the theater and put in a state-of-the-art, engineered by a company that specializes in this, a sound wall that allows us to have a show going in here and literally a wild party going on in the lobby and the restaurant, and the sounds are completely deadened. In fact, when they finished, they said, you can now have a shooting in your lobby and no one will know. I don't know if that's a plus for us, but that actually, it is very, very good soundproofing. So we can have a wedding party out going in the restaurant at the same time the theater's going. That was part of our vision. And then we put in we gutted everything literally out to the timbers, and then sometimes more than that, and replaced the entire interior. We put in 2 new kitchens. We ripped out all of the old kitchens and all of the old restaurant equipment, rebuilt the entire space into 2, one full banquet kitchen and 1 fine dining kitchen, and created a more modern look and feel so you can see the chefs cooking while you're waiting for your dinner. And we put a brand new full bar right in the center of the restaurant to create energy and flow and excitement as you come and eat dinner.
Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful design.
Thank you.
And the restaurant is called Cast and Crew, and I just want to restate that it is open to anyone for dinner.
Right, you don't have to go to a show.
You don't have to go to a show, so you can stop in, see, maybe decide what play you're going to see in the future, get some tickets, and that would be a perfect way to do it. And I know that my husband and I are definitely going to be seeing a show here and having dinner. Wonderful. And I'm hoping you'll be a cameo in whatever we come to in the future. Is
I
there
might
anything
stay behind stage before I get on stage.
No cameos planned, no more theater planned here? I think that would be really fun.
I still have my day job. I'm still running my company, and this is where I spend a day a week, and evenings and weekends, and a show requires a lot of commitment. You have to be here for every performance. I can't commit to that yet.
It does. Well, I hope that someday you will, and we'll see you back up on the stage.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Frankenfield, thank you so very much. And joining me now, we have Kent Knutson, our artistic director at the Old Log Theater. So welcome, Kent. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for being here and speaking with me. It's going to be interesting, and I hope I can provide you some interesting answers.
You know, we have such a jewel here in our neighborhood, and sometimes we forget, including myself, what a jewel we do have here. So it's been wonderful to see the new renovation. I see that the whole entire building has been renovated, and that means to you bigger, different productions.
Yeah, it's been kind of a gift. I've worked 42 years in educational theater, nonprofit and other, building community theaters and starting professional theaters in Anoka and the areas surrounding, and then came to Minnetonka 14 years ago and made a friendship with Greg Frankenfield and taught his children, and also at Gregan Productions at the Minnetonka Community Theater, which is now the Art Center. And he has hired me to come here, and wow, the care and the love that he and Marissa have shown for this building and the upkeep of it and transforming it from what it was, a very, very quaint, charming, I think, relic of the past, as well as providing a view into the future for the theater arts, as well as the restaurant business, has been spectacular.
Well, and you can certainly see that. So I hope people come here as we talk about the shows that are coming up, and they can see for themselves.
I think the first thing they say when they walk in is, I haven't been here for 10 years, or I haven't been here for 5 years, and then just a wow. And the wow factor here is amazing, from the amount of money that he poured into it, just to the amount of care he took to keep everything that was precious here, to maintain it, keep it, but then update technology and update the infrastructure and those things that you have to in any home that you've owned. I have a 70s.
And that's expensive.
It's very expensive.
Theater is very, very expensive.
And especially when you're a for-profit theater, without grants or loans or gifts from anyone. He had to do it all out of his pocket. And I think that's the entrepreneurial benefactor that he is, and to the arts as well as to this community.
Right, and that is one of the things that we were briefly discussing before we had this, was the for-profit. Now, you were saying that there are 3 for-profit?
Correct. Chanhassen Dinner Theater, this theater, the Old Log, and I believe it's the Frank Theater in downtown Minneapolis. And that's it. The Guthrie and Children's Theater and the theaters I used to work at, the Art Center in Minnetonka, and the rest are all not-for-profit, which means you are able to get breaks in taxes and as well as endowments and grants from the federal government and other sources. People are happy to give to a not-for-profit organization because they see it as a charitable donation and can deduct it at tax time. A for-profit building, which Don Stoltz has kept this for 75 years, he and his family paid the bills, paid the way, hired actors, and made a life, I think, here for the acting community in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. He did that and did it selflessly, and Greg has continued that process. But it is a very different horse to ride, so to speak, in the theater community.
Sure, sure. And very unusual. I
Yes.
am part of the Lundstrom Center for the
Okay.
Performing Arts and helped found that with, introducing people and writing grants and all of that.
So you know
it
how
is
it's-
so unusual to have an actual for-profit that makes a profit and can sustain itself.
And stay
So,
open, right?
Yes. I wanted to have a little bit of time for you to talk about your background, like what is an artistic director and your history here in this area besides
Good.
just the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's most amazing about this community is how open and welcoming it's been to the arts, not just theater, but orchestra, band, choir, opera. It has been from day one that I knew about Anoka, was in Anoka and knew about Minnetonka. I had my eyes sort of set down here as to a model or a role model for what I would like to do. The city was very instrumental at the Arts Center on 7 in teaming with the school district to build this beautiful complex that houses orchestra, band, choir, dance, and theater. They hired me in 2002 out of my job at Anoka to come here and take over the theater program and also become the artistic director of the Arts Center, which we did successfully for 12 years until Greg lured me or forced me or coerced me to come over to Old Dog. No, it was a very, very happy departure. I was retired from teaching, and it was time for the last chapter, I guess, of my history. I've always worked with kids, I've always worked with families and parents, but this gives me a chance to go one step beyond, to work with people who have dedicated their life and devoted their life to making a living and perpetuating the arts. And that's what an artistic director really does. He lays or she lays the groundwork for a theater. You have a mission statement that you want to create art, or that you want to create something in that building that will appeal to your community, be beneficial to the community, as well as to the artists that are in the area that would like to be employed or continue that kind of work. So an artistic director picks the season along with the producer. The producer in this case is the owner. Greg serves both as producer and the CEO, owner of the company. And what we try to do is find plays or find things that will appeal to a variety of audiences. And that means sometimes it's hard because people are used to a certain thing. There may have been shows here in the past that were farces or comedies, and they would primarily do those. What my vision would be coming in was those are all fabulous, but I also think there's a broader market or a broader need. And I bring that from high school. As a teacher, I believe all my shows need to educate. The Greeks said the process of theater needs to do two things: entertain and educate. Not necessarily one or the other, but both. And so a lot of the plays that we've chosen here in our last 3 years or our 3 seasons, we hope will do that. Musicals being one of them. Now, Don Stoltz, who is the founder and the I guess kind of one of the grandfathers of theater in this whole town, along with Frank Whiting and Tyrone Guthrie. Don Stoltz's name is right up there, and everyone in the country knows him and knows of his experiment here on Lake Minnetonka and the success of it. And Don did straight shows a long time ago that were cutting edge. I mean, he was doing everything that you can imagine in theater, along with the Guthrie, as well as doing entertaining pieces to try to get people in, to try to get people to understand and get the scope of his process. What we did with that was just a tag team. I knew Don well. I came up here when I was a 5th grader for the first time. Wow. That was way back in the early 60s. I don't want to date myself, but Don's, yeah, okay, I was old. But I feel like the building. But Don was able to do that, reach across boundaries and grab all ages of kids. I was a 5th grader. We have matinee shows that are going on Wednesdays and Thursdays during the school year. And then in the evening we turn it around and we'll have an adult production or a production that will feature families. Some of those, of course, are musical theater, which is my forte. I've loved it. I believe that because in high school, musical theater can attract so many more students. A cast for a show like Our Town will have maybe 15 to 16 kids in it. A show like Aida, which I just did a couple of years ago, will have probably 80 kids on stage, 40 in the orchestra, 20 that are working on the crew, and another 20 that work as ushers or around the theater. So you're working with almost 200 students, 200 people for every show. Our production right now, we're doing Velocity of Autumn, which is a show that people should not miss about educating things. I mean, I lost my mother a few months ago to Alzheimer's, and it was a 7-year tragic struggle with it that we weren't prepared for. I wasn't prepared because it's just a disease that we don't talk about. I knew something about dementia when Reagan was president. His wife talked about Nancy afterwards, but not really knew what to expect until suddenly my mother came home from the doctor and said, my memory loss isn't just my getting old, it's something else. This
Horrible
showed,
disease.
Oh, right,
Horrible
right.
disease.
It's terrible, and I just saw that Romney's wife, who ran for president a couple of years ago, was head of a huge fundraising drive to do advance neurological science, and that's happening all over the country. They say in another 10 years we'll have a nasal spray that defeats Alzheimer's. I hope so, because
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Wouldn't it? And that's what this show talks about. The woman that's in it is losing her memory and is grasping for things. Her family's worried about her and debating whether or not she can take care of herself, and should they put her in a place, or should they have someone come in as a nanny and sort of supervise all the same things we had to go through with my mom.
Right.
And it's hard. This play will get people ready for it. Her 20-year absent son, he's 40 now, but he's been absent from her life for 20 years, is called by the sister, his older sister, and said, "Come home. Mom always understood you best. You were the artists." The father was a teacher, and all right brain, and everything was math and science for them. But the younger son was an artist, a painter, just like his mom. And so he climbs through a window. It's a comedy, but we call it comic drama. So it's got lots of poignant, real facts and realistic things that happen in it. He climbs through the window and says, "Mom, what are you doing?" And she simply looks back at him and says, "What would you do?" It's called growing old, and it's really hard. And it's not the way people see it, and especially with the threat of dementia and Alzheimer's, it's definitely not the way I looked at growing old. But it can also be beautiful, as the show tells. So the audiences that have seen it are moved beyond, I can't tell you, they come out in the lobby and talk. There are tears, there's also laughter, and that's what I think theater should do, and that's what this theater is kind of about now. On the other side, we also will be doing, in about a month, Wedding Singer. And Wedding Singer is a musical made possible by the fact that Greg let me come in here when we started 3 years ago, expand the stage. It's now 300 square feet larger than it was. We took out the first 3 rows of the audience and put the stage out, so it's not a thrust, but it's like that. It comes out into the audience to make the action closer and give me space for dancing and for casts of 20, 25, 28, which would be unheard of in the size space that it was before.
Right.
Wedding Singer, of course, this place has been, many hundreds of thousands of people have been married at the Old Log in 75 years. This is the place they come, even if they're not doing the ceremony here, they come to take pictures at the 100-year-old Old Log Cottage at the place that Don built and that Greg has refurbished. Now the grounds are beautiful. It's 13 acres of land, somewhere around there, right on Lake Minnetonka. The leaves are changing. We're better to come, and we're better to celebrate that history of joining people together in our community to live in the community and go on, or from without, than the Old Log Theater, than this particular play. And Wedding Singer is perfect. It's about a guy that dedicates his whole life to making people happy. And he does it through music and through his performance at the wedding parties, the wedding gatherings afterwards. It's funny. It was an Adam Sandler movie, but the play is, I think, much better written. The same man wrote the screenplay and then redid it and wrote the book in New York. It was nominated for 8 Tony Awards, and I saw it not wanting to. Those kinds of things are okay. The movie was fine, but when I saw the show and then read it, I fell in love with it. It's just very touching and very heartwarming, and I think a nice family piece to follow what we're doing with Velocity of Autumn. That's the old age, and now we go to something that looks at the beginning. This summer we did Charlotte's Web, which is one of our elementary shows. Ann Bird from the community college, who's a fabulous director, and her husband Sean are directing here also with me. John Cranny will be here in the fall, or the winter, right after our fall show, to do Blithe Spirit, an old classic. And then we'll be coming back in the spring with a brand new musical just licensed by Greg, which is the $1 Million Quartet, which is the Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins story. And it's an amazing piece. It's been in Chicago for 5 years, never even released, but he was able to secure the rights and get it here. So for the first time, it'll be a premiere in the Midwest of that particular show. And Jerry Lee Lewis, I'm sorry, I forgot one. So it's those 4 guys. It's a true story about the first time they got together and sang and played before they became superstars, but at the place of Sun Records in the 50s, mid-50s in December. And it was the first time and last time they ever sang and played together, but it was recorded and it's true, and this is the play that comes out of that. So lots of different things at the Log, lots of different kinds of shows. A serious drama about aging and about your children and about family and decisions. A play about starting a family, about getting married that's fun and kick up your heels and have a great time with it. Cinderella at Christmas, the version that my son is writing along with me. It'll be an original old Log family contraption, which is what Don used to celebrate with his family. They all worked here and all retired here. So we'll be doing that for children at Christmas time, and then Life Spirit, and then the $1 Million Quartet, and then hopefully, if we can keep the doors open, on we go. Sorry, I talk a ton.
No, that is perfect. That was exactly what I wanted to know was
Good.
What's here, what's coming up, what can we expect, what can we buy tickets and go see?
Good.
So you answered all of that. Thank you for being a part of this. I
Jan.
know that you have a legacy, which I learned Googling you here, and we are so lucky in this part of the cities to have you.
I love the community, and like I said, I was at Blaine and Anoka Hennepin. I came right out of college at the University of Minnesota and had my first teaching job at Blaine, which was a brand new school. We only had 10th graders. And then eventually, by the time 3 years had passed, we got 12th graders in a school of 3,500. I was there for 15 years, and then for the next 15 years, I went to Anoka, which was a little bit older school, but we had 3,700 students there. The Anoka Hennepin had the largest school district, bigger than Minneapolis. And we built the arts there, not me, but the district, the superintendent, the board, allowed those things to become as important as football and hockey, and I've relished in that. When I came to Minnetonka, they already had an establishment of that. They just allowed me to continue and expand it. We built a black box and a $40 million addition to the Arts Center.
That's amazing.
And then when Greg brought me here, he's doing the same thing, only out of his pocket. Instead of being able to go to the taxpayers or go to someone else, the goodness of his heart and his pockets are turned out for the community, and they just need to know it's here. It's a gem,
Yeah,
a
it
jewel.
really is. Thank you so very much.
My pleasure.
Thanks so much for watching The Pulse. I'm Jennifer Ray and appreciate your time today. Up next, we do have the Got Money segment regarding saving your receipts for your children's expenses for your Minnesota taxes. Until next time, Godspeed. Thanks for watching The Pulse. Hello, I'm Jennifer Ray, President of Genco Financial Services and the host of the Got Money Show here at the LMCC. It being back to school time, I thought this was a great time of year to remind you about your tax deduction for school supplies and children's activities. So the bottom line is keep receipts for everything. I repeat, keep receipts for everything. Your tax preparer can filter through your receipts. It's best to have one that isn't a deduction than to miss one that could be a deduction. On your Minnesota Schedule M1ED, and I have one of those right here in front of me, here is a list of the deductions that you might be able to take for your children. And this is fees for enrichment or academic classes, and these are taken outside the regular school day or school year, including all-day kindergarten. Private school tuition is not deductible. You'll need to list the organization or school name and the type of class, i.e. Minnetonka Center for the Arts, finger painting. Fees for individual instruction by a qualified instructor taught outside the regular school day or year, such as tutoring or music lessons. Purchases or required school materials that you have either before the school year and during the school year, textbooks, paper, pencils, notebooks, folders, glue, scissors, protractors, whatever it be. Keep those receipts. Purchases or rentals of musical instruments used during the regular school day. Transportation costs paid to others for the regular school day. Example, my niece would have to pay $400 a year for her daughter who just started kindergarten to be picked up from home and returned back. She decides to drive her there instead, but if she did pay the $400, that is deductible. Personal computer hardware and educational software expenses, only not to exceed $200. Remember that the Minnesota legislature allows the cost of anything arts related to be deductible on your state income tax. So ballet classes, music lessons, singing lessons, theater camp, painting, crafting, anything artsy is deductible. However, examples of expenses for children's activities that would not be deductible for sports include football, soccer, swimming, gymnastics. These are not deductible. I repeat, sports are not deductible. So why is art classes deductible and sports not? It's our state legislature's way of getting you to support the arts. To help me, as a certified divorce financial analyst, I started preparing income taxes a few years ago, and I have noticed that some people are excellent record keepers. However, I also noticed how difficult it is for other people to keep track of their receipts or records. If you don't have your receipt, you can't deduct it. So get a box, maybe you have one at home, go to Walmart, Target, or a thrift store. You can even use large envelopes. Throw everything into that box or envelope. If you need a receipt, you'll know right where it is. You can even have several boxes or envelopes and designate each with a different category: utilities, food, household, children. And you can even have each envelope be for each different child, one for Susie, one for Tommy. A few years ago, I started keeping track of every penny we spent. A budget is the foundation of planning, no matter what your plan is for: retirement, divorce, children's education, or buying a cabin. So I ask others to keep track and know what they spend their money on when preparing financial plans. So I figured I'd better know how hard or easy it is to keep all of these receipts and what the outcome was versus what I thought it was. So I started keeping track of it for my own family. I keep every receipt, so does my husband. Everyone knows to put it right in a particular box, and I log it on a spreadsheet, each and every expense we have for the calendar year. The bottom line is it is very expensive to live, so you should take every deduction you can from your state taxes, and that means saving your receipts. Remember, if you don't have a financial plan, what are you planning? Godspeed until next time. I'm Jennifer Ray. Thanks for watching The Got Money Show.